Good morning. How you all doing?
Good morning.
Baruch Hashem.
So yesterday we were completing the subject matter of borer, the sugya of borer. And we saw that in order for something to be permissible under that, this is the normal way of eating, of preparing food and eating, that as long as one is taking out the good from the bad, and is doing so without a utensil specifically made for separating, and so essentially by hand, and is doing it immediately prior to eating. So whether in the act of eating, like taking with a fork, taking their food, or in preparation for eating, so peeling a vegetable or fruit, or taking food and putting it on a plate to serve it, or into a bowl to serve it, all that would be in preparation of food, and that would be the manner of eating and not selecting. But in any other way, that would be selecting and would be a part of the prohibition, whether you're selecting for later or tomorrow, or and even if they're both edible, or if they are, or if you're selecting the bad from the good, or if you're using a vessel. So the Gemara says, it tells a story. Ki asa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, as we've mentioned many times, Rav Dimi and some other Chachamim would go back and forth from Eretz Yisrael to Babel to bring the Torah from the teachings from one to the other. So when Rav Dimi came, Amar, he said, Shabbos of Rav Bevayu, it was the Shabbos of Rav Bevayu, the son of Abaye. That's where he was. Ve'iklu Rabbi Ami Rav Asi, and Rabbi Ami Rav Asi came to visit. Shada kamayim kalkala the peri, and he emptied a basket of fruit in front of them onto the table. Instead of just putting the basket down, he emptied the basket out. And I didn't know. Is it because he felt that taking that's a mixture of fruit, and if there was bad fruit in there, taking the good, even though that it's immediately prior to eating and it's by hand and it's without and you're taking the good from the bad, nevertheless it's going to be prohibited because good from the bad is also considered selecting. Is that the reason he did so? Or he wanted to show, go have it all, have as much as you want, and so he rolled it out on the table for that reason. That was the intention. So Chizkiah said that somebody selects turmesin, which was a type of food that it was very hard and needed to be cooked multiple times in order to become good, and you had to get it out of the skins. So if you select the turmesin in this pot that's been cooked multiple times, so Chayiv, that's going to be considered selecting. It's going to be considered borer. So, but you're taking the turmesin, which is the food. Are you telling me that Chizkiah is of the opinion that even if you take the food from the bad, take the good from the bad, and nevertheless it's going to count as borer? So Gemara says, Shani turmesin, and now we turn the page to Ayin Daled Amud Beis. Shani turmesin, the shalki le shiva zimni. You have to cook it 7 times in order to make it edible. The ilay shalki le misrach, and if you don't, then it's going to go bad, and therefore it's considered the bad from the good because it itself is no good, and you're taking it out in order for it not to rot. It's a simple way that Rashi lives. There's a lot of different interpretations in this explanation in this Gemara. Hatoche, so grinding. So grinding means simply you take a wheat berry, you grind it down to dust, and then make flour out of it. Amar Papa says, Haimanda parim silka chay mishum techi. So Amar Papa says, Haimanda parim silka, somebody who minces, silka is beets. So somebody who minces beets, which is mincing, is when you chop something down very, very fine. That's tochin. Tosus and the Rush and others have a chiddush here that says that really fruits and vegetables are not in the Torah prohibition of grinding, because you don't grind vegetables. You grind berries. You grind maybe legumes, wheat berries, grains. But you don't grind vegetables. And so that's not a normal thing to do with it, so it wouldn't be a part of the Torah prohibition. It seems that others may disagree with that, and even though that the Beis Yosef writes that the Ikar Halacha is like that, nevertheless, we don't do grinding even on fruits and vegetables, or mincing fruits and vegetables, because of the opinions that say that it may be a Torah prohibition. So, Hayman the Param Silka, somebody who minces selek, beets, that is grinding. If somebody is exacting in the measure, that they're cutting it exactly an inch by an inch, exactly. So even if you're making big cubes, but if you're being exacting, you're using a measuring tape or whatever it is, you need it to be exactly a certain size. That's also going to be a prohibition, but not grinding, because it's too large to be grinding, but rather on account of mechatech. Mechatech is the prohibition, is the malacha of cutting leather down to its size, down to a specific size, and that anytime you cut something down to a specific size or on a perforation where it needs to be cut, that's going to be mechatech, the Torah prohibition of cutting. Haloshva ofe. So somebody kneads and bakes. Amar Papa shavik tanadi done bishul some money. Even though that in the Beis Hamikdash, in the preparation for the work of the Beis Hamikdash, the cooking was really what was done, because they would cook the flours in order to make the dye. Nevertheless, the Tana in our Mishnah used ofe, baking. So he left what was really a part of the work of the Mishkan, and we said that the melachas are based on the work for the Mishkan. So Shavik Tana Didan Bishul Tzamanav Dava Mishkan. He left the cooking of the spices, which was used for making the dye in preparation of the Mishkan. Benaket Ofe. And he chose to say baking. Why? Tane Didan Sidura de Pasnaka. Because in order to get the other malachos, he used the terms that apply to baking bread. So once he's talking about baking bread, so he used baking. Somebody who takes a peg and throws it into the oven to heat it up as finishing the product in order for it to become stronger. That's cooking. Someone says pshita. That's obvious. He's heating it up, so he's cooking it. Maybe all he's doing is he's hardening it. Kamash malan, the mirpi rafi v'hadakami. At first, it softens it to some degree and cooks the waters in there so they evaporate, and that's how it strengthens it, and that is going to be a part of the finishing of the vessel, the strengthening of the vessel, and it has cooking components and is going to be prohibited as cooking. Irtach kufra, somebody who heats up tar and it becomes loose is going to be cooking, and chayim. So when it says pshita, that seems obvious. Yeah, it's only cooking it temporarily, but it's going to harden back to the way it was. He's not really changing the components of it and making something new. Typically, when you cook something, other than water, when you cook something, it changes the molecular components, it changes the structure, and it becomes a different product. Some, with proteins particularly, it'll harden. In some things, it'll soften. In fibers, it'll soften. So you take a hard carrot, it becomes soft. You take a loose egg, it becomes hard, etc. So, but it changes. It changes the makeup of the product. In tar, it just loosened and became and it became hard again. Amalai, so maybe that doesn't count as cooking. Kamash Malani says, no, that counts as cooking too. Amar Rava. Haiman the Ava Chavita. Somebody who makes a barrel. So these are clay barrels. So somebody makes a clay barrel, is Chai Mashum Sheva Chatos, is going to transgress 7 Torah prohibitions and need to bring 7 Chatos offerings. And Rashi says that these are the grinding up of the dirt to make, before he starts the clay. Selecting out the chunks of the prohibited, the chunks of clay that he doesn't want, sifting it, putting in water, so that's kneading, smoothing it out in order to make it the shape he wants. That's memachek, that's smoothing out. That's 5. Mavir, lighting a fire in order to heat it up. Mavashil, the cooking of it. So you got 7 prohibitions for making a barrel, a clay barrel, a clay vessel. Tanura chaymashim shmona. Making an oven is going to have one more, because what they would do with an oven is after they finish making it, they would smear a layer of on it in order to keep it to keep its heat. So that also had another, like a sealant. And that sealant is also going to be a prohibition, a chatas. Abaye says somebody makes a wicker basket. He's going to have 10. Now here the 10 is a machlokas in the Rishonim. What exactly the 10? We're going to go with Rashi. It's reaping, cutting down the reeds. And since reeds will continue to grow, we saw earlier that he's cutting down, plus it's like pruning because it's making more growth. So it's harvesting and pruning, gathering them in. So that's ma'amer, that's making bundles. Bara, selecting the good ones from the bad ones. Memachek, smoothing them out in order to be able to weave them. Grinding. Now Rashi has a chiddush here in grinding that other Rishonim say as well, that if with wood products, with growth, wood products or reeds, if you cut it down thin to the size you need it, that's also going to be grinding. Even though the sense of grinding is breaking it down to small particles and then reconstituting it. But with wood, that would be the same. Other Rishonim disagree with this and say that it's something else. But this is the way Rashi says. Mechatech, cutting something down to measure. Mesach. So this is, even though this is not a weave that you normally think of as weaving a garment, but it's a weave. You have to put down the verticals and hold them taut from one side to the other. That's a mesach. And oseshtei botinirin, making the 2 weave heddles in order to lift and drop the odd and even number vertical lines. So that also is going to be a prohibition. So that's 9. 10 is the actual weaving, and 11 is completing the product. When you do the finishing touches, that's maka b'patish. The 11th is going to be the completion of it, the folding in the ends and making it usable. And if you knot the ends, there's another 2 prohibitions, because he has to sew the end, a thread through it, and knot it afterwards. So he's sewing a thread through it, or a twine through it, and then knotting the end. So that's going to be a total of 13 prohibitions within one vessel. Somebody shears the wool off of a sheep and whitens it. Somebody who shears, somebody who spins wool directly off of the animal, in other words, while the animal's alive, is spinning the wool off of the back of the animal, is going to transgress 3 prohibitions. Mishum gozes. Essentially, as they take all the hair off and they spin it, that is gozes, that sharing. Vachas mishum manapetz, and they're also sort of combing it, separating hair from hair in order for it to be fine enough to make thread out of. Vachas mishum tava, and one for spinning it into thread. Rav Kahana ama in derech geziza bekach, vein derech manapetz bekach, vein derech tavi bekach. But Rav Kahana says, no, that's an abnormal way of doing it, and it would not be a Torah prohibition, as we saw that a Torah prohibition has to be done in the normal way that you would do this work. If you do it in a backwards way, that would be prohibited, but not the chatas transgression. The transgression that brings a chatas, not a Torah level prohibition. So Gemara says, "V'loy, is that really an abnormal way? It's not a normal way of doing it." But Tani, we learned that the pasuk says, and we'll see this later in the Gemara, that in making the Mishkan, they spun the goat hairs into threads for the Mishkan coverings out of right directly off the backs of the goats while they were alive. And basically, the Farshers say the reason is in order for the threads not to become tummy, because if it was while it's on a live animal, it's not susceptible to tumah, because live animals are not susceptible to tumah. In any case, that they washed it and spun it right off of the goats. So we see that does count as spinning. So Gemara says, of course, but Chachmi Yisera, Shana, that's a very special skill that they did specifically for the Mishkan. But that's not a typical way. And even if somebody knows how to do that, their actions are negated by the classic norms of people, and therefore it doesn't count as a normal way of spinning and would not be transgression, the Torah transgression. Somebody pulls out a feather from a bird, that's shearing, kotem, and if he cuts off the hard spine, is so there he's cutting it exactly because he wants the soft feather parts off of the hard spine, so he's cutting it exact. And mamarit, and when he smooths them out, so that's spreading and smoothing, and that's going to be the malacha of mamachik. Hakoshav amati, someone who knots and unties. So kshira b'mishkan echavir. Where in the preparation of the Mishkan was there knotting? Why is that one of the malachas? Amar Rava shaken kosher may say this all. Says, well, when they pulled down the curtains of the courtyard, so they had to tie them down to stabilizing pegs. So that's the knotting. So the Gemara says, no, how kosher almanas lahatir. That is knotting, that is a temporary knot, because they could have traveled that day, that week, then that month. It was temporary. They don't know how long it's going to be. We'll see later that kosher, one of the fundamental basics that you need in order to transgress on a Torah level, tying a knot, it has to be a stable knot, a knot that will last, a knot that is a professional's knot. So it has to be a knot that will last. If you intend to untie that knot, for sure in that day, but could be even in that week, is not going to count as a permanent knot. So over here, they could have traveled this very same day. So why does it count as a permanent knot? It says, well, when they were making the coverings, which were made out of a weave, so those threads, if they snapped, they would tie them together. If they tore it, they tied it together. Amalei Rava Taratzla Kosher Matir Mai. Fine. So that's where they put the knot in. And where did they untie it? They wanted that to stay. They would needed a continuous thread in order to make a weave. Michael Amema. Well, if it happened that in the weave 2 knots came together, so that would make it too thick and so they would untie one in order to tie them all together so it wouldn't be two knots near each other. The Misrami Treichuti Katiri, Bahadi Adadi, Shari Chad, Vikotachad, they would untie one and tie the other. It says, Hashel Frame Melech Basav Adame Nusakin. That's poverty. You're skimping on a little bit of thread. That even in front of a human king, you wouldn't do that when you were weaving. You would untie and retie the same threads in order to save a little bit of threads when you found two knots near each other. So it can't be. We have a rule: ein aniyas b'makam ashiras. In the place of wealth of the Beis Hamikdash, we're showing our gifts and our care for our relationship with Hashem. You can't have skimping on a little bit of thread. That's poverty. Elam Rava says V'temer Rabbi Lai, or in the name some say Rabbi Lai said Shekain Tzadich Halazin Kosher No Matir. Rather, in making the techeles dye, techeles being the blue that came from a certain sea creature, that techeles dye, in order to do it, they had to put nets into the water to catch these creatures. So making nets has tying and untying, depending on how big and how small you want the net to be. And somebody who sews two sewings, meaning going in and out, is one. Two will not stand and will not remain in there. It has to be that he actually knotted it at the end. Now, if he knotted it, so then you have knotting. So Rashi says that it was a single knot. Others say there wasn't the same type of knot, and it would have to be double in order to transgress. Somebody who tears something in order to sew it. So that would be non-destructive, and therefore it transgress. So where was there tearing in preparation of building the Mishkan? So Rabbi and Rabbi Zera both say, now we're on Ayin Hey Amid Aleph 75a. Shekain Yuriya Shenaf Badarna. These cloths that the material used to cover the Mishkan is very. These were enormous pieces of cloth, and if there was a hole in one of them, a moth hole or a wormhole in one of it, so they would close it up. But if there's a hole and you try and sew it just like that, it's going to make a fold. So they would cut the ends to make it a longer hole, and this way the sewing would not create a crease. And even though we just said that in place of the wealth of the Mishkan, we wouldn't have poverty. You wouldn't do this for a king. So why are we doing this for Hashem? Because over here, it's already been used for something, for Kedusha. And once it's used for Kedusha, then we repair it. Like a Sefer Torah, that before it's been used, if there are mistakes, or a mantle or something, so then it would have to be replaced. But once it's there, we're always trying to maintain the usage of it, to maintain the Kedusha. Same for Sefer Torah mantles and other parts of the shul. Something that's already been used for Kedusha, even though if when we start we wouldn't have bought this for it or initiated the use like this, because it may not be at its height. Once it's been used for Kaddish, for something holy, we maintain it and try to repair it so that it can remain Kaddish. Somebody who has a seam that's sewed together, but the thread is loosening, and so now the seam, you can see through the seam. But if you pull the thread tight, that'll close the seam. That is essentially sewing. Even though I didn't put the needle through and do the sewing, the thread's already through. But since it's loose and I pull it and now it tightens it, that is the Torah prohibition of sewing. And if somebody does so on Shabbos, they have to bring a sin offering. Alomi dover min hamagus. So hamagus, or probably majus, this is the origins of the word magician, the majus or the magus. These were Zoroastrian sorcerers, and somebody who learned something from them is chayav misa. That is worthy of death. You're leaving, as the way the Rishonim say, you're leaving life, Torah, to learn something from a source of death. Somebody who knows and understands astronomy and astrology, so they know how to deal with the astrophysics and astrometaphysics. And doesn't do the calculation, doesn't work on it. Also, you're not allowed to talk about it. Some Rishonim say you can't quote him in halacha. You can say the halacha, but you can't say his name. Some say you can't talk about his praise, because they're missing out, as we'll see soon. They're missing out an opportunity to show the brilliance of Torah, which taught us the calculations of the heavenly orbs. Magushta. So what? Yeah, question about something. Why isn't a belt or a pull tie around the sack a problem? Those are not woven through the material. That weave is simply there in a loop around. What we're talking about is a seam that is pulling two pieces of material together by pulling the sewing thread. And even say a shoelace, first of all, it usually doesn't pull it that tight, and second of all, it's the same piece of leather that's being pulled together. You're not sewing two pieces together, and it's not a permanent sew. You don't want it to look like a thread. You don't want to look like a seam. You're just trying to tighten it around the shoe. So you're typically not sewing two pieces together to become one. So what is this magus or majus? What is this? So Rav Shmuel Chadam Acharshi, one says that it's a sorcerer, as the simple meaning. Chadam Gedufi, and one says no. The issue is that it is a mean that they are idolaters, and even though that they are primarily were sorcerers, but we know that in ancient times sorcerers were really political powers and spiritual powers, spiritual leaders. And as such, the prohibition of learning from them is because they are another religious teacher, and they would be, it's Megadeh for Hashem, Tamid, they lead people to idolatry and away from Hashem. So let's prove that Rav is the one that says that it's Gedufi, that they are idolaters and leading to idolatry. Since we know that Rav is the one that said that somebody who learns something from a magus is chayav misa. Must be that it's not just a sorcerer. Must be that it's an idolater. The Isa Kedaita Charshi. If you tell me it's just a sorcerer, Haksiv, it says that you're not allowed to learn sorcery in order to do it, but you're allowed to learn sorcery in order to understand it and understand how its structure and how it works. In order to, because the halachas that apply to what sorcery is. To Sayim, indeed, that's proof that Rav is the one that says that the magus is a religious practitioner leading to avodah zarah. Amar B'Shem Pazi, Amar B'Shem Levi, B'Shem B'Kapara. Kol yedei lachashiv b'tkufas amazolas v'nachoshev alav v'nachoshev alav v'kasavoyim. Somebody who knows how to calculate the physical and astrophysics and astrometaphysics, astrology and astronomy, and he doesn't make those calculations. All of a kasavomer about him, he says, "As Pa'al Hashem lo yabitu umasav masiyadav leiro." They don't look at the majesty of the acts and the creations of Hashem. They don't take the opportunity to learn that which he could. So somebody knows how to do it and doesn't do it is losing out in seeing the awesomeness of Hashem's creation. How do we know that there is a mitzvah for a person to try and learn these and make these calculations? For it says, and you will guard them and you will do them. So that's doing the mitzvahs in their time. Because it is your wisdom and your depth of understanding to the eyes of the nations. What part of Torah can the nations also do? The nations also have the calculations. They can see the wisdom. The calculation of the mazolas. Now, we're not talking about the simple calendrial calculations. That is simple. But we're talking about the precise millisecond of the lunar cycle, which even though the Chacham tells us, even though the Beis Din would only pronounce Chodesh based on two witnesses, but nevertheless knew the calculations and knew exactly when the exact moment of the Molad is, so that they were able to negate some testimony where, and we see Rabbi Gamaliel did and others, where somebody came and said, we saw the new moon. They would say impossible, because it's not yet been 29 and a half days plus the parts that it is. So that Chishuv to Kufas and Mazolis was a part of the structure of Beis Din. And it was such a profound wisdom, even though many other Chachamim of the ancient world were able to calculate, but the particulars of the preciseness of the lunar cycle, as well as the solar cycle, were very particular. I remember Morris showing an article that he wrote for a scientific journal that the barley calculations that were used by the Chachamim in order to create the system for the lunar cycle, and proving that it was the Babylonians who learned it from the Chachamim and not vice versa. Hatzad Tzvi, somebody who traps a deer. So Tana Rabbanan, Hatzad Chilazon v'Hapotzei ein chai v'la'achas. Somebody who traps this Chilazon, which is a sea creature that has the blue dye, which was used for techelas, for the Mishkan. Some say it's a type of snail, or some say it's a type of squid, both of which would not fit with the Gemara, which we saw in Menachos and elsewhere, that says that the structure of the Mishkan, everything in the Mikdash and Mishkan had to be what minamuta b'ficha, that which was permissible to be eaten. We saw earlier in regards to which creatures were used for their hides were used for the Mishkan. So the Rabbi Yehuda has a lengthy tshuva about whether the dyes also had to come from a kosher animal, and if so, then it would not be chilazon, the snail, or rather would be a kosher animal, a kosher sea creature. In any case, but if somebody traps this chilazon creature, va'apotzel, and squeezes out the dye, and it seems that the dye would not necessarily be the blood, even though it said the blood, it would be a certain gland it has. But either way, if he squeezes it out, so that would only be one transgression, not two. However, Yehuda says it's two transgressions, one for the trapping of it, and the second for the squeezing it out, for the extraction. Shahir Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda said, because squeezing out is the same as threshing. We saw earlier, threshing is extracting the wheat berry from the husk, from the stalk. And so the same over here, extracting what you need, this blue secretion and for dye, there's also going to be disha. Amalei and Petzia Bechlal disha. So the Chacham said no. Petzia does not count in disha, in threshing. Amar Rabbi, my time in the Rabbanan, Kasavri and disha l'legdula karka. Disha, and therefore also mefarik extraction, is only going to apply something that grows from the ground. And this would not work. What we talked about yesterday, that disha would apply to milking a cow. Or some say, how the Megan Mishnah says that milking cow would be, since it grows off the ground, meaning it grazes on the ground, it also counts as gidule karka, something that grows off of the ground, and therefore milking would apply to the dash, like threshing, whereas this secretion that comes in this sea creature, since it doesn't grow off the ground, it doesn't graze, it lives in the sea. Therefore, it would not apply there, but it would apply to milking a cow.
Why wouldn't it be mefarik, like any schita?
Schita is only something that grows from the ground in the deraisa schita. Correct. That's what he's saying there. For the chayav nami mishum netilas neshama. So why don't we say that he should be chayiv for killing this creature, and netilas neshama is a prohibition of shchita, of shechting, which we saw one of the prohibitions. So why is that not included? On Rabbi Yochanan shapatzai mes. Rabbi Yochanan says because he's squeezing out the secretion after this creature died. So however, Rava says even if he's squeezing it out while this creature is alive. He's not intending to kill it. That's secondary. He's just trying to get the dye out, and the animal, this creature, dies on its own. So the Gemara says, so what? If somebody says, I want to cut off the head of a chicken, but I don't want the chicken to die, that's not going to count. Because it's for sure going to happen. And even Rabbi Shimon, who says that since the Torah prohibited an intentional act, so therefore it has to be that it's a davash mischaven, and it has to be something that you're intending. And davash eina mischaven is pater, that it's something that you don't intend is not going to be a Torah prohibition, and you're not going to bring a sin offering if you transgressed. Nevertheless, but if you know absolutely it's going to happen, so then it's going to be chayiv. Because you can't tell me, I didn't intend for that to happen. How did you intend for this chicken to continue living if you cut the head off? So therefore, it must be that it was intentional. Or by definition, it's intentional. So shani hacha, the kama the isbei neshama tvei nichale. No, over here, the longer this animal lives, the better it is for the dye. And so these trappers who are extracting this secretion are actually trying to keep the animal alive, so that it'll have a better dye. The blue dye is going to be better. Now, the Ran says version here, and therefore it's not for sure it's going to die, because maybe since they're trying to keep it alive, it actually will stay alive. Others say, it seems that way in Rashi, that no, it's going to die. But nevertheless, since I don't want it to die, and I'm doing everything in my power to continue to help it continue to live, well, not everything. If I would just let it be, then it would continue to live. But while taking the dye for techeles, I'm trying to keep it alive. That is not a psik ratio. You can't tell me, well, that's your intentional act. Well, no, actually my intention is, and I don't want this to happen. It's only when it's neutral. I don't care whether the chicken lives or dies. And I need the head. So I'm cutting off the head because I need the head, but I don't care about the rest of the chicken. That's where you can say, look, it's going to happen. And obviously that's what you're doing. But if I'm actually wanting it to stay alive, I don't want it to die because I need it. And the longer it's alive, the better it is. That actually does not count as my action. Further, Mishnah said, "V'hatzova v'ashochte."
Isn't there recognition that a chicken? Just saying, a chicken's a higher life form than a snail. Is there any
Assuming Chila's a
consideration?
snail. Assuming Chila's a snail.
Whatever, it's some kind of a mollusk or some kind of a.
Oh no, not necessarily. It's a sea creature of some sort. I don't know. It could be a sea urchin, which is a plant.
Okay. But it's not a vertebrate. It's not a fish, is it?
I don't know.
You just don't want me to say that we know what it is, but
we don't know what it is.
It doesn't sound like they're describing a fish ever. They're not describing some kind of a fish. They call it a chilazon. It's not a fish. They don't say
just because in modern Hebrew they call a snail a chilazon.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they don't call it a dog. We have dog.
Rashi says a dog many times.
Yeah, I touched a nerve. I get it. Okay. So, but even a fish is a lower life form than a chicken. Is there any consideration for that?
No.
No.
It either has life or not, right? Sea urchins are a stationary planted creature, right? Now, Ashochte. So the Mishnah further says somebody who shechts something. So generally, when somebody shechts an animal, what transgression do they have? Now, for sure, taking a neshama, killing something is a Torah prohibition. If I want the dead animal, as we'll see, just killing something to get rid of it is not going to be the Torah prohibition because that's destructive. That's not constructive. Anytime that you trap or anytime that you shecht, you kill, it has to be that I want it as opposed to where I don't want it. So generally, when somebody shechts, or in our Mishnah, what act of it is going to be the prohibition? What is he transgressing? So Rav Amar Mishum Tzeveya. Rav says for dying. There's dying in there, right? And Rashi says that this was a part of the preparation of the Mishkan. Where was the shechting in the preparation of the Mishkan? And you can't tell me it's for the hides that they needed for the coverings of the Mishkan, because those hides could have come from a strangled animal. You don't have to shecht it. So where's the shechita? So Mishum Tzaveh, because they wanted some dye, they wanted some of the blood to color the hides. Shmuel says, no, anytime you cause death, and that is halacha, that is a Torah prohibition of shechita. So we're now on Ayin Hey Amid base. Mishum Tzeveh in Mishum Netilas Hashem Allah. So did Rab mean only that it causes discoloration, and that's why, but not for taking a life, and taking a life is not a Torah prohibition? The Gemara says, no, for sure that is. But Af Mishum Tzeveh, he said that there is also an aspect of dying, of discoloration. Amar Rav, Milsa da Amri, Ema ba Milsa, the Lelesu Dara Basroi, Velachuchi Allah. Let me explain myself. This that I just said, that there is tzoveya, causing a discoloration, the dying of the hide. I don't want the future generations to laugh at me, so I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. My nichale, what is that? Nichale, what does he want out of this discoloration? Nicha de litvas be'shchita dama. He wants the place that the slaughtering happened to be red with blood. The seller, the butcher, wants people to buy it, and so he wants people to see that it has this red dye on it, this red color, so it looks like it's freshly been slaughtered. Let's do one more. One who salts it, and one who puts it in a brine in order to sit. Hides have to go into a brine in order to become hides, to become soft. So they seem to be the same thing. One is specific, salting it, and the other is the more general term of all of the tanning of working with hides. So Rabbi Yochanan says, indeed, we have to take one of these out. We take out salting because that's a specific term, and you leave in a ma'abed, the general term, or vice versa. You leave the specific, and you take out the general term, and everything else would be a tolda. So what do you put in as the 39th malacha then? The scoring, making a line where you're going to cut, because the person cutting the hides down to size in order to make a wallet, a pouch, a saddle, whatever it is, they have to first score it, make a line where they want to cut, and then they cut. So Rabbi Ravuna said somebody who's going to make jerky, we'll see in the Gemara soon, salt meat down to bone dry, is going to be ma'abed. That is essentially working, tanning, working the instead of leather and hides, is working the meat. However, Rav Amma ain't nibud boichlin. No, food doesn't apply. This ibud, this tanning of working and salting something, doesn't apply to food. You won't have a Torah prohibition for pickling. Amar Rashi v'afilu Rabbi Bar Avuna, and even Rabbi Bar Avuna only meant he needs to maintain the meat for a long journey, so he's turning it into jerky. He's doing a lot of salting, really taking out all the juices. But if you're just salting at home, a person doesn't turn his food into wood, and therefore even Rabbi Bar Avuna would not say that that's a prohibition of salting. We'll continue tomorrow, Bez Hashem, with more of the malachas.